let's say you wanted to do 21% of a number like 4,000. Okay? 21% of 4,000, you might have thought to yourself, I can't do that in my head. You actually can do this in your head because working with percentages is not too terribly hard. If you want to figure out what 21% of 4,000 is, this is the thought process I would go through. So you have to imagine yourself sitting here thinking. This is what you're thinking, right? Now I know that anytime we do mental math, a lot of you don't, like the problem always is about what you write down. So let's not focus on what we write down. Let's focus on what the thought process is. It helps to write it down, okay? Because then you can look back at what the idea is for working with percentages mentally. You should be happy about this because you're always told, oh, show your work, all this kind of stuff. Now while you have to write it down, this is going to be, how you can do this without a calculator. So what you're thinking is this. This is probably a good way to start. If you're working with percentages, the best thing to do is think about what the whole is first. The whole is 4,000, right? And you want to know what the part is, right? That's what we want. Remember, you have three things involved in a percent. We want to know what part of 4,000 is 21%. This is what we're looking for. So you can start by thinking this 100% of 4,000 is how much? 4,000, right? That's the whole thing. If you want 20%, there's a couple different ways you could do it. The simplest way to do it is to go what 10% is next. Because 10% of something's easy if you know what 100% is. If 100% is 4,000, what's 10% of that? What's 10%? 400. Because all you have to do is divide it by 10, right? If you divide it by 10, you got what 10% is. 21, we got to think about how we can make up a 21. 21 I can make up as, this is the other thing you're thinking here. So you got to think several things at once, and that's why it's difficult here. You got to think 21 is like 10 plus 10 plus 1, right? Not trying to insult your intelligence, but that's one thing you have to think here. 10 plus 10 plus 1. We got what 10% is. We need what 1% is. What's 1%? Not 4. It has a 4 in it. It's 40, right? You can divide by 10 again. If you have what 10% and what 1% is, and you know that 21 is 10 plus 10 plus 1, and now you got what 10% is and you got what 1% is, how can I figure this out? We need another thought bubble here. There's a lot of thoughts to have all at once. So you're thinking, I need 10% and another 10% and 1%, right? I know it looks like a lot of thoughts up here, but I think you can do this, right? If you can figure out what 10% is and what 1% is, then what is 21% going to be? I need 400 and another 400, right? Because we got 10 and 10. And what else do I need here? And 40, right? And then I guess I should have made that thought bubble a little bigger because we need the actual answer, which is how much? 840. That looks like a lot it's a lot to write, but it's not necessarily a lot to think. You can do almost any percentage like that, okay? Let's try a few others, because that 21% isn't one of the ones that we do in grade 8 here, right? Which is, obviously you work with percentages like that all the time, but sometimes we want to be able to do some that are bigger than 100%. So let's try something like 160% of 800. You got to think about this again. Well, you're slightly happy now. Your mouth is not very happy, but just slightly because maybe you feel like you can do it a little bit. Up here, not happy. See, because all those thoughts. What are we thinking here? How can we think our way through this? If you want to do 160%, the best place to start is always 100%, especially if the number you want is more than that. 100% is 800. Now 60 we can make up with a bunch of tens if we want. Or we could make it up. You got to think about how you could make up your 160, right? How can you make up 160? You could make it up as 100 and a bunch of tens, or what's another easy way you could break it up into numbers you could work with? Times that by 6. Absolutely. You could do, there's a couple ways you could do it. One is to say I got 100 and a bunch of tens, right? Times 6. Or you could do 150 and 10, right? So there's more than one way to do this. There isn't sort of only one way to do each of these things. Whatever makes some sense to you. For this one, I'm going to do it this way. But you could figure out what 10 is and times it by 6. All right, so because 50 is an easy one. Since 50 is an easy one, this might be easier to do. What's 50% then? 50% is 400. So I got 150% and I need another 10%. What's 10%? Well, if 100% was 800, 10% is 80, right? I don't even need my third thought bubble here because I'm good at consolidating my thoughts all into one thing here. I'm going to put, and you're going to start to sound smart here if you learn how to say, you know how the word therefore? Therefore is a word like, this is all true, therefore this must be true. This is the answer. There's actually a symbol for therefore. Anybody know the symbol for therefore? Mathematicians are lazy. They make up symbols for things. Mathematicians also like to use words like therefore. What is it? It's 3 dots in a triangle. Yeah, I mean, mathematicians are also a bit weird. They make up, like, I don't know why that would be therefore, but that's what it is. So if you want to learn the symbol for therefore, you can say, therefore, 160% is how much? Well, we got all 3 of those together, 1,280, right? All 3 of those added together. Or, of course, you could have done it the other way that was suggested here, which is just take 100% and take 6 times as much as this, right? That would be the other way to do it. If you're doing 100% and then 6 of the 10%, right? So you could say 6 of these is 480, and then this makes it 1,280. There's more than one way to do each of these things. Let's try one like a fractional percent here. Actually, let's do one that's less than. How about 1/4% of, what kind of number do we want to work with here? 60,000. How about that? 1/4% of 60,000. You can work your way down to a 1/4%. Even though I know some of you look, oh, it's a fraction in there. It's a percent that has a fraction in it. That's tough. You can still work your way down here. If you're tired of drawing the person, it's fine if you just write down the things. But I like drawing the person. Start at 100%. Your thoughts are red this time. I don't know why. 100% is 60,000. If you go 100, 10, 1, then you can get there. What's the next one here? Isn't it just 15,000? It's not a quarter of it. If it said a quarter of 60,000, then it's 15,000. But that's actually another way you could do it, is if you realize a quarter of it, it's a quarter of a percent. The difference visually for that is, you know when you draw those hundreds grids? A quarter is like a quarter of the whole grid. A 1/4% is a quarter of one little square, right? That much? A 1/4% is not very much, right? A quarter is like 0.25%. So it's the difference between 0.25% and 25%. But that actually is a different way you could do this. You could figure out what 25% is and then just take 1 divided by 100. That'd be another way you could do this. Anyways, the way I was thinking is of going the way we did some of the other ones, right? 10% is 6,000. 1% is how much? 600. If you have 1% and you want a 1/4% is actually smaller, right? You could go 0.5% first, or if you can divide this by 4, if you want a 1/4%, you can go directly there and say, how much is a 1/4%? If 1% is 600, a 1/4% is 150. If you want first, you could do 0.5% first and say 0.5% is 300, so a 1/4% is divided by 2 again. Should we try the ultimate difficult one here? The ultimate difficult one might be 12 and 3/4% of 5,000. Is that crazy? Do we want 5,000? Should we try that? Let's try. You want to test yourself? I've done the first 3 and then I leave you the hardest one? No? Okay. So you're a bit worried about this one, so your mouth's kind of like that. Actually, that's not a worried mouth. How do you draw a worried mouth? Like this? That's unhappy. I don't know. Anyways, we'll just go with the straight old no expression at all. Although that doesn't look very good. Okay, again, I think easiest place to start, 100% is 5,000. 10% is, because we need to get 10, right? We need that 12 is like 10 plus 1 plus 1 plus 3/4. We'll figure out 3/4 in a second, right? 10% is how much here? Divided by 10, right? To get 10%, you just take off a 0, move the decimal spot. So it's 500. We also need 1%. 1% is 50. 3/4%, first we need to know what 1/4% is. And I didn't make up a nice number, did I? What's a 1/4%? Do you know what a 1/4 of 50 is? If you know what 1% is, this is not very nice. This would test the limits of being able to do it in your head without writing it down, I think. Too bad I didn't make it 6,000 instead of 5,000 or something. What's a 1/4 of 50? Anybody know? It is 12.5, exactly. A 1/4 is 12.5. So this is such a difficult one. We need a second thought here, a third thought. So what do we got here? We need 10% plus 1% plus 1% plus 3/4%, right? Like we need, let's write it this way instead. 2% plus 3/4%. Can we do that? 10% was how much? 500. If 1% is 50, 2% is how much? If 1% is 50, 100, right? We need 100 here. 3/4% is maybe tough because if 1/4% is that, what's it going to be? What is it? Yeah, 37.5. You need 3 of those. So this is obviously a tough one to do. You can do it without a calculator if you write it down. That would be tough to do in your head without a calculator, I would say. But I want to convince you that you can do a lot of these without a calculator. Okay? Are we all right with that? So that's working with percentages, thinking about what the percentage of a number is without a calculator. Break it apart into parts that are easy to work with mentally. All right? Are we okay with that idea? All right, good.